Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Let's dive into today's story. I never planned to go through her phone. But when someone leaves it on the bathroom sink, screen unlocked, music still playing from the night before, the universe kind of gives you a choice. Look, or walk away. It was 6:12 a.m. A weird time to be up, even for me. The kind of early where it's still dark enough to question your life decisions, but just light enough to see all the cracks in your ceiling you've never noticed. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, when it buzzed. A single notification lit up the screen. Photo received from Blake. I stared at it for a second. Not because of the name, but because of the emoji. Blake was supposed to be her coworker. A married one at that. The kind of guy who only talks about golf and quarterly targets. I'd seen him once in a Zoom call and instantly disliked him, not for any real reason. Just a gut thing. The message disappeared before I could see more. And I really tried, to ignore it. But then I saw it. The camera roll was still open. She must have been editing something. A selfie? No. It wasn't her face. Not really. It was her dress. The red one. The same one she swore she got rid of after I said it made me uncomfortable. Not because it was revealing, but because she wore it to a party last year where a guy wouldn't stop staring at her chest and she laughed about it afterward. Said I was too sensitive. But there it was, hugging her curves in high resolution, standing in what looked like hotel mirror. Then I noticed the timestamp. 12:38 a.m. Last night. The night of the office party. She told me not to come. Said it was casual. Said I'd hate it. I stayed home. Made soup. Folded her laundry. Watched the show we were supposed to finish together, without her. And now I was looking at her standing in front of a hotel mirror, taking a picture that she later sent to a man who added. I backed away from the sink like it was on fire. My heart pounding, throat dry, brain begging me to rewind time 30 seconds. But there's no rewind button when you finally see the truth. I didn't say anything. Not right away. I just walked back to bed and laid there. She came out humming. Hair wrapped in a towel. Babe, you up early? I nodded. She didn't notice anything was wrong. Not the silence. Not the way my eyes didn't meet hers. She just started getting dressed, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. She didn't know I'd seen it. Not yet. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to confront her in the bathroom. I wasn't going to yell or throw her phone across the room. No. I was going to wait. Just long enough for her to think everything was fine. Just long enough to see if she'd lie to my face. Because this wasn't the end of our marriage. But it was the very first thread unraveling. It's wild how someone can lie to your face so effortlessly once they've had a little practice. And Mallory? She smiled so much that morning, it felt like she was trying to convince herself that she hadn't done anything wrong. She made French toast. With cinnamon. She hadn't cooked for me in weeks. Said she'd missed doing little things, and winked while handing me a fork. I looked down at the plate, saw the powdered sugar, and nearly choked on my own breath. Not because of the sugar, but because this was exactly what she used to make the morning after our wedding. She was recreating that. Playing it up like we were still us. I watched her dance around the kitchen in her robe, hair still wet, phone nearby, face down. That was new. She always kept it face up. Said it was easier to see notifications. Now it was flipped like it had something to hide. And I already knew it did. I didn't touch my food. She noticed. You okay? I nodded. Swallowed hard. Yeah. Just tired. Didn't sleep great. Mallory came over and pressed her palm to my forehead like I was a child. You don't feel warm. Maybe it's stress. You've been working too hard again, haven't you? I just nodded again. But what I wanted to say was, you're sleeping with someone named Blake and I know it. Instead, I stared at the maple syrup running off the side of the toast like it was a metaphor for our relationship, sweet at first glance, but falling apart when no one was watching. Around noon, she said she had errands to run. I asked if she wanted company. She blinked, that same blink from before. The one she did when she was caught off guard. Oh. It's just boring stuff. Grocery store. Dry cleaning. That place you hate. I'll be quick. I stood up and grabbed my keys. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I'll drive you. She looked uneasy. It's okay, Elle, really. But I insisted. Not because I didn't trust her, that ship had already sunk, but because I needed to see how much effort she'd put into lying now that she knew I was watching. She hesitated for 3 seconds too long. Then smiled again. Sure. If you want. We drove in silence. I watched her closely the whole ride. The way she stared out the window instead of scrolling. The way she gripped her phone tight in her lap, like it might slip away and betray her. I turned down the music just to hear her breathing. It was shaky. Controlled. Like a student prepping for an oral exam they didn't study for. We parked in front of a strip mall. She pointed toward a nail salon and said, I'll be quick. Just picking up a gift card for Jeanette. I'll come, I said. Another pause. Babe, it's literally 2 minutes. I'll still come. That's when it happened. She snapped. Not loud. Not crazy. Just, sharp. Can you not be weird today? I froze. She realized she overplayed her hand, and her voice softened immediately. I just meant, you've been acting off. You're never this clingy. Clingy. That word. That was the one that stuck. Like I was some desperate vine choking her fun. I followed her into the salon anyway. And just as she said, it took 2 minutes. She smiled at the receptionist, made a joke about last-minute gifting, and we left. But here's the thing. When we got back in the car, her phone buzzed. And this time, I saw the name. Clear as day. Blake. I didn't say anything. She didn't say anything either. She just turned her phone upside down and stared ahead like she hadn't just shattered what was left of my trust. That evening, I told her I had a migraine and needed to lie down. I stayed in the bedroom with the door closed while she scrolled TikTok on the couch like nothing had happened. And sometime around midnight, when she thought I was asleep, I heard the front door open, and close. Quiet. Soft. Like guilt on tiptoe. By the time she came back that night, I had already placed it. A tiny camera. Hidden in the decorative candle jar on our console table, the one she always hated because it smelled like a dentist's office, but never got around to tossing out. It was motion activated, synced to a private cloud, no blinking lights. I know it sounds paranoid, maybe even petty. But when you start to feel like a stranger in your own home, like a ghost haunting your own marriage, you begin to do desperate things just to prove to yourself that you're not losing your mind. She returned at 1:41 a.m. I heard the lock turn, the door open, the soft clink of her heels against the hardwood, 1, 2, 3 steps, then a pause. I was already watching on my laptop screen from under the covers, heart pounding like I'd committed a crime. The feed from the camera showed her standing in the entryway. She wasn't wearing her heels. She was holding them. Her lipstick was smudged. Her hair looked windblown and uneven, like someone had been running their hands through it in a hurry. She didn't look drunk. She looked satisfied. Then, she did something that nearly made me throw up. She pulled out her phone, giggled quietly, the same laugh she used to give me after we kissed on the couch, and typed something fast. A message. Then she smiled at the screen and whispered, barely audible, "You're bad." I stared at the video stream like it wasn't real. Like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I wanted her to stop. I wanted her to notice the camera. I wanted her to suddenly feel the weight of what she was doing. But she didn't. She floated through the house like nothing mattered. Threw her purse on the chair, tiptoed into the bathroom, came out 20 minutes later in her sleep shirt, the one that used to be mine. And then she crawled into bed beside me. Her arm brushed mine. She mumbled, "Love you," into the dark and rolled over. That's when I knew I wasn't going to confront her the way I used to imagine. No dramatic fight. No name-calling or screaming matches in the kitchen. Something inside me had snapped, but not the kind of snap that makes you explode. It was quieter. It made me still. Like when you finally stop struggling in a nightmare and just let it drag you under. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. I got up early. Made coffee. Even folded her throw blanket and placed her favorite mug next to her laptop. She kissed my cheek like I hadn't seen her entire betrayal in night vision clarity. And I smiled like my insides weren't rotting. But while she worked on her laptop at the dining table, I logged into the camera feed archive and downloaded the footage. Then I backed it up to a drive. Then another. And then another. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just knew I couldn't let her rewrite the story later, not when the time came. Because make no mistake, that time was coming. Later that day, she told me Blake was going to be promoted soon. "Isn't that cool?" she said, grinning like she was talking about her favorite actor getting an award. I nodded, pretending not to see how she lit up just saying his name. She went on about how smart he was, how the team looked up to him. How he deserved good things. I asked casually, "Do you think he's happy in his marriage?" Her expression flickered. Just for a second. But it was enough. She laughed. Not naturally, too fast, too loud. "Wow. Jealous much? Don't be weird, Elle." There it was again. Weird. A word she only used when she needed to shut something down. When the truth was tapping on the glass and she didn't want to look. That night, I opened our shared storage unit and began moving out a few things she wouldn't notice. My childhood photo albums. My grandfather's pocket watch. The sealed envelope that held the title to my old car. I didn't know if I was building an escape plan or just trying to remind myself that I existed before her, that I had a history that didn't include her mouth full of lies. I didn't say anything when she left for book club the next evening. I didn't ask why she dressed like she was going to a rooftop bar instead of someone's living room. I didn't question why she sprayed perfume in places no one would smell unless they were very close. I just smiled and said, "Have fun." Because I knew what was coming. And when it did, I'd be ready. I kept thinking about how easily people lie. Not just in words, but in silence. In the little shrugs. The forced laughs. The way they look at you when you're talking, not really listening, just waiting for you to stop. Mallory had become an expert in all of it. And I had become a participant in my own humiliation. That Friday, I came home from the grocery store a little earlier than usual. I had a weird feeling, like something was about to snap but hadn't yet. The house was quiet, too quiet, and for a second I thought maybe I had the wrong key in the lock. But no, it was ours. Same welcome mat. Same smell of her floral plug-in she overused. Then I heard it. Not moaning. Not laughter. Not the sounds you'd expect from the clichés of betrayal. Just a whisper. I stood in the hallway, back pressed to the wall, not breathing. Her voice was low and careful, the kind of tone people use when they're trying not to be overheard. And she wasn't on the phone, I could tell. Her pauses were too short. She was responding in real time. I stepped forward, just enough to hear her clearly. She was in the kitchen. You can't just say things like that, she whispered. What if he's home? No, he won't come in yet. He always goes to Trader Joe's first. She giggled then. A high-pitched sound that didn't belong in the home we built together. I didn't walk in. I couldn't. I backed out of the hallway and went around the house instead, through the side gate, past the dying rosemary bush I always meant to pull. I stood outside the kitchen window, heart rattling in my ribs, and peeked in just enough to see her. She was leaning against the counter. Barefoot. Phone in hand. Wearing his hoodie, not mine. I'd never seen it before. It was too big on her, sleeves halfway down her hands, and she was biting the cuff like a teenager with a crush. I don't know, Blake, she said, dragging his name out like a dare. Maybe I'll wear that red thing again. You liked that, didn't you? I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked back to the car, left the groceries in the trunk, and sat there staring at the steering wheel like it had betrayed me too. She never once texted to ask why I was late. When I came back inside an hour later, enough time to calm my hands and force a smile, she was sitting at the dining table flipping through a magazine. Calm. Normal. Boringly unbothered. I thought I heard you come in earlier, she said, eyes still on the page. Had to go back out. Forgot something. She didn't ask what. She didn't care. She just nodded and went back to reading, like I was furniture that sometimes wandered off. Later that night, we had dinner. Silent. She scrolled through her phone like usual. I noticed the text bubbles reflected in her wine glass. I couldn't read them, but I knew they weren't about work. That's when something strange happened. I reached for my water and accidentally knocked over her wine. It spilled across the table and hit the floor. Her glass shattered, not all the way, just enough to crack. I looked up, ready to apologize. But she didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or scold me or even move. She just stared at it. Then slowly, she got up, walked to the drawer, pulled out a towel, and knelt beside the mess. As she cleaned, I asked quietly, "Do you miss me at all?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, without looking at me, "You're being dramatic." That was it. That was her whole response. I sat there, watching her blot the wine out of the rug, and realized she hadn't said, "I love you," in weeks. Maybe longer. Not by accident. Not because she forgot. She was done. She just hadn't said it yet. But I knew. And the only reason she hadn't ended it already, was because I hadn't done it first. There's a special kind of cruelty in pretending things are fine when they're not. And Mallory had become an expert at that. She smiled a little brighter. Hugged a little longer. Even started cooking again, like she was trying to create the illusion of warmth without ever turning on the heat. And I played my part like a fool. I laughed when I was supposed to. Kissed her forehead. Asked about her day with a voice that barely held together. But the truth? I was waiting for something. A sign. A crack. Anything to make the pretending stop. It came 2 days later, in the form of an email. Mallory had left her laptop open on the kitchen island while she was on the phone in the next room. I was just grabbing a glass of water. I swear I wasn't snooping. But Outlook was open, and the subject line read. Last night. Again. That emoji hit me like a hammer. My eyes flicked to the sender. Blake. Chambers at Something Media. Calm. I hesitated. A normal person would have looked away. A stronger man would have closed the laptop and walked out of the house with his dignity intact. But I clicked. The thread was short, just a few exchanges. I didn't read every word, some were too much. But I read enough. Enough to see her writing about how dangerous it felt kissing in the elevator. Enough to see her ask if his wife was suspicious yet. Enough to read the sentence that snapped what little I had left inside me. Eldon is sweet, but he doesn't see me. Not like you do. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen like I was floating above my own body. It wasn't just betrayal. It was dismissal. Condescension. Like I was some well-meaning child who should have known better than to fall in love with someone like her. When she walked back in, I had already closed the tab. She smiled, took her laptop, and said, "Hope that client didn't send another last-minute ask, they're driving me nuts." I just nodded. And in that moment, I made a choice. Not the kind of choice you make with a dramatic speech or some big exit. No. It was internal. Quiet. I decided that I wasn't going to confront her anymore. Not with words. Not yet. I was going to let her dig the hole herself. Brick by brick. Lie by lie. Until she was so far down, she wouldn't see the light when I finally left her there. That night, I booked a hotel room under a name she wouldn't recognize. Just for one night, a week from then. I didn't even know if I was going to use it. I just needed to know I had an exit. A place that wasn't our bed, filled with lies. A place where the air didn't smell like her perfume and cheap apologies. The next morning, she was extra cheerful. She made blueberry pancakes. She poured me coffee and kissed my cheek twice, like she was trying to rewrite the email I'd read with actions she thought would mask it. I played along. I even told her I loved her when I left for a walk. But in my chest, something had died. Quietly. Permanently. I started leaving little things out of the house. Nothing big enough for her to notice. A pair of shoes. My backup drive. A folder of documents. I took them to my friend Avery's garage 2 towns over. Told him I was decluttering. He didn't ask questions. Just nodded. He'd seen me unraveling over the last few months. I think he knew something was wrong, but he gave me the gift of silence. That afternoon, I watched Mallory from across the street. I was supposed to be at work, but I told them I was taking a personal day. I sat in my car behind tinted windows and waited. At exactly 2:47 p.m., she came out of the house in a black coat and sunglasses. Got into her car. Drove east. I followed. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just wanted proof, not the kind you capture on camera or read in a text. The kind you feel in your bones. She parked in front of a wine bar. Not crowded. Classy. Low lighting even in the daytime. I waited. 10 minutes later, Blake showed up. They didn't hug. Not right away. But when they sat across from each other and leaned in, her hand found his under the table. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. And I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, realizing the person I married wasn't just gone. She'd been gone for a long time. I didn't sleep the night after I saw them together. Not because I was crying or broken, I think that part of me had already bled out. It was something worse. Numbness. That hollow, echoing silence that fills your chest when you've already accepted the truth but your body hasn't caught up yet. I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing. She slept so easily. As if nothing in her world was fractured. As if her lies were pillows she could rest her head on. She murmured his name once in her sleep. Not loud. Not moaning. Just a whisper. Blake. And then she turned over and curled toward me like I was warmth. The next morning, I stood in the shower for 36 minutes. I counted. I didn't cry. I didn't think. I just let the water hit me until it turned cold, until my skin wrinkled like I'd aged a decade overnight. I dried off in silence. Got dressed. Made myself toast I didn't eat. She was already gone, early meeting, she said the night before. I didn't care. I was grateful not to see her face. I started making preparations. Not the dramatic kind. No suitcases. No slamming doors. Just quiet dismantling. I opened our file cabinet and pulled out copies of our marriage license, the deed to the house, bank statements. I scanned everything to a folder and uploaded it to a drive she didn't know existed. I didn't have a plan, not fully, but I had momentum, and that was more than I'd had in months. Around noon, I drove to my sister's house. She and I hadn't been close for years, not because of any fight, just life and distance. But she answered the door in her robe, messy bun, holding a baby on one hip and a banana on the other. "Eldon?" I just nodded. She blinked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I married one." She let me in without asking another question. We sat on her back porch while her toddler destroyed a flower pot in the yard, and I told her everything. Not with bitterness. Not with drama. Just the facts. The emails. The photos. The laughs I wasn't meant to hear. When I was done, she poured me iced tea and said, "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But it's not going to be yelling or throwing clothes out the window." She smiled faintly. "Good. Make it quiet. Make it impossible to forget." That night, Mallory brought home Thai food. My favorite, or maybe our favorite, once upon a time. She acted normal. Talked about a client pitch. Laughed at a meme she showed me on her phone. I pretended to enjoy it. I nodded in the right places. I let her kiss my forehead when she got up to shower. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened the shared photo library on our TV. She never used it. Said it was clunky. But I'd synced my phone to it months ago, and she'd never bothered to remove access. I queued up a series of pictures, nothing explicit, nothing violent, nothing that would violate decency. Just moments. Her in the mirror, posing for him in the red dress. A screenshot of the email with the subject line. A still frame from the candle cam, her smiling at her phone, wearing his hoodie. Then I left it on pause. Paused on her smile. Paused on her betrayal. Paused on the moment her face stopped being mine. She came out of the shower 20 minutes later, towel wrapped tight, humming something upbeat. She saw the screen and froze. Her eyes darted to me. I didn't speak. She opened her mouth. Still, I didn't speak. She took one step forward, and I picked up the remote. "Don't." She stopped. The silence was suffocating. The house had never felt so loud. Her lip trembled. "I can explain." I shook my head. "No," I said. "You can't. Not anymore." And with that, I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. And she didn't chase me. The strange part about leaving is how quickly the silence changes color. At first, it was warm, like stepping into a quiet forest after a storm. I checked into the hotel I'd reserved under a false name, dropped my duffel bag on the floor, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at nothing. No notifications. No footsteps pacing the hallway. No sound of her humming through the walls. Just my own breathing and the hum of the air conditioner. It was the first time in months I felt like I could hear myself think. I slept like the dead that night. No dreams. No memories. Just darkness. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't check my emails. I didn't even turn on the TV. I sat with a notebook in my lap, pen in hand, trying to write something that made sense, but the only thing I kept scribbling was, "She won't stop me from being myself again." Over and over. Until the page tore. At noon, my phone buzzed. "Mallory. Where are you?" "No, hey. No, are you okay?" Just panic, straight to the point. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, another one came in. We need to talk. Please. I turned my phone face down and left it on the table. Then the calls started. 4 of them in 1 hour. I let them all ring out. Her voicemail messages were chaotic, the first demanding answers, the second begging, the third quieter, and the fourth, furious. She wasn't upset because I left. She was upset because I didn't tell her I was going. Because I hadn't given her a scene. Because I hadn't fought. And for someone like Mallory, who fed on drama like oxygen, my silence was the one thing she couldn't manipulate. That evening, I logged into our home's Wi-Fi remotely, something she'd never changed the password to. I pulled the camera feed from the hidden unit one last time. She was pacing the living room, barefoot, phone in hand, muttering to herself. She looked around the house like it had betrayed her too. Then she sat on the couch and scrolled her phone for a long time. Until she landed on a picture of us, the one from our 3rd anniversary at the lake. She stared at it like she was waiting for it to speak. Then she started crying. Not loud. Not movie scene sobbing. Just the quiet kind. The kind you feel behind your eyes more than in your chest. I thought it would satisfy me to see that. It didn't. Because it didn't change anything. She cried for herself. Not for me. Not for what she destroyed. 2 days later, I got an email. Not from her. It was from Blake's wife. She'd found my burner account. The subject line read, "We need to talk. I think we're on the same side of this." My hands shook as I read it. She wrote that she had seen strange messages on his phone, that she suspected something was wrong, and when she finally cornered him, he denied everything. But when she followed his car one afternoon, it led her to a wine bar. And he wasn't alone. Her description of Mallory was dead on. The red lipstick. The black coat. The laugh. She attached a photo. I didn't even flinch. We agreed to talk on the phone the next day. Her voice was calm. Strong. Controlled in a way mine never had been. She told me she wasn't looking for revenge. She wasn't going to scream at anyone or show up with cameras. She just wanted out. Clean. Final. No drama, she said. And I realized, that's exactly what I wanted too. We didn't need to burn down the house to walk away from it. We just had to leave the doors open so it could collapse on its own. That night, I finally responded to Mallory's last message. Just one line. You don't need to wonder where I am. Just know that I'm not yours anymore. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because in that silence, I knew she finally understood. The strangest thing about moving on is how ordinary it looks from the outside. There were no explosions. No dramatic goodbye. No screaming in parking lots or furniture tossed onto the lawn. In the end, it wasn't about revenge or being right or getting the last word. It was about freedom. Quiet, deliberate freedom. The kind you don't post about. The kind you keep for yourself. The final conversation with Mallory took place in a quiet coffee shop halfway between the house we used to share and the hotel I had called home for a week. She asked to meet, just to understand. I said yes, not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to close the book with my own 2 hands. She arrived late. Wore sunglasses even though we were indoors. Her makeup was too perfect, the kind you wear when you're hoping to look like you're okay. I just wore a hoodie and jeans. No armor. No masks. She sat down, and for a long time, we didn't speak. Then she said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I stirred my coffee. You didn't mean not to. She looked away. Maybe she had more to say. Maybe she had rehearsed a speech. But I didn't want to hear it. The version of me that would have begged for answers, that man was gone. I'm not here to blame you, I said. I just want you to know that I forgive you. Her eyes widened. Maybe that wasn't the reaction she expected. But, I added, forgiveness doesn't mean staying. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means I'm done carrying this with me. We talked logistics after that, the house, the accounts, the separation. No fights. No tears. Just two people quietly agreeing to end a story that should have ended a long time ago. I moved in with my friend Avery for a while, just until I found a place of my own. He had a spare room filled with boxes and a broken futon, but it was more honest than anything I'd had in months. We drank cheap beer on the porch, watched bad reality TV, and didn't talk much about what happened. That was exactly what I needed. And somewhere in the stillness of those days, I started remembering things I used to love. Old hobbies. Old books. I picked up a camera again, something I hadn't touched since our honeymoon. I started walking more. Not for exercise. Just to be outside. Just to be here. I even reconnected with my sister. She invited me over for dinner every other Friday. Her toddler now calls me Uncle L, and for the first time in years, that name didn't feel like a joke. And one evening, I found myself smiling, not because I had finally moved on, but because I had finally come back to myself. So yeah, a simple party ended my marriage. But in a way I never expected, it gave me my life back. Thanks for watching this story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had a moment like this, a quiet turning point that changed everything, drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. See you next time.